Daniel Pink wrote a book called A Whole New Mind. How many are left brain, more dominant in your left brain? Can I see your hands if you're more dominant in your left brain? How many of you are more dominant in your right brain? Daniel Pink wrote a book called A Whole New Mind. Why right-brainers, the subtitle is, Why Right-Brainers Will Rule the World. And he argues in this book that the very survival of our planet is dependent on more and more people learning to nurture and develop the right side of their brain. He argues in this book that we are shifting, we are moving right now from an age of information that relies on knowledge workers to what he says will be an age of intuition, relying on people who have the capacity for compassion and empathy. You know, when I think of that shift, I think of the church. And I think of the church, how the church historically has been about getting the right information. Where the church historically, and I'm thinking big church, the church historically has had this focus about having the right beliefs, making sure you have the right beliefs. One of my persons I really appreciate a lot, Father Richard Rohr, says, you notice you can have all of the right beliefs and still be a jerk? He says you can have all of the knowledge in the world. You can have all of the right information. You can adhere to all of those beliefs that others will tell you are orthodox beliefs, yet still not be a compassionate person, a loving person. You still may have a closed off and defended heart. And he asks, do you suppose that God, however you might want to understand God, do you really think God would prefer we have the right beliefs? Or do you think God would hope that somehow we manifest love and peace and compassion? There's a woman, a sociologist of religion, Phyllis Tickle. I like her name, Phyllis Tickle. She wrote a book called The New Emergence, Why Christianity is Changing, or How Christianity is Changing and Why. And in her book, she articulates that every 500 years, the Christian church has a giant rummage sale where they discard outdated beliefs and practices and traditions that no longer work, that they might make room for something new to emerge, a new faith. She says ever since the time of Jesus, every 500 years there's been a major shift, a major disruption. The year 500, the fall of Rome, the rise of the papacy and monasticism. The year 1000, the split between the East and the West. The year 1500, the Protestant Reformation. She says every 500 years there's this giant rummage sale where the old, dominant, rigid expressions of faith give way to something new, more flexible. And she says we're right in the middle of such a shift right now. That's why there's so much conflict in the church. Because there's a lot of people trying to hang on to that which no longer works anymore. And she says right now, we're in the middle of a new Reformation. Now, isn't it fascinating that this gentleman over here and this church have been preaching that very thing for 30 years? The need for a new faith. A faith that perhaps is less reliant on the left side of our brain that has to get it all right and nurtures the right side of our brain. That intuition, that imagination, mystery, love. You know, when I think of the shift from the age of information to the age of intuition, somebody just told me this story last week. This gentleman couldn't sleep. He just couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop thinking about a friend of his, someone he hadn't seen in months, he hadn't talked to in months, they'd kind of lost touch. But for whatever reason, he woke up in the middle of the night and he thought of this person and he couldn't stop thinking about this person. He had this nagging sense that his friend was in deep trouble. Have you ever had that experience? How many of you have had that experience? Almost everybody. Now my guess is we've all had that experience. And we dismiss it as not rational. Or we stay so busy that we don't even pay attention to it. Well, Bruce, it was 2 o'clock in the morning and my friend Bruce just couldn't stop thinking about his friend. So he woke up and he said to his wife, I have to go visit my friend. It's 2 in the morning. His wife thought he was nuts. He thought he was nuts. But he got in the car. His friend lived 2 hours away. He drove into his friend's driveway at 4 in the morning thinking, this is insane. I don't even know if he's home. He knocked on the door. No answer. Knocked. No answer. Knocked louder and was just about to leave. And the lights came on. He heard footsteps. The door opened, revealing his friend, bewildered. Bruce, what are you doing here? Bruce walked into the house, told his friend what had brought him there. And his friend said, I'm fine. Really, I'm fine. Well, they sat down and they had a cup of coffee. They talked for about an hour. And if my friend had a tail, it would be firmly between his legs. He felt just utterly stupid for being so impulsive. Went back home, and he didn't think about it again. 3 months later, his friend paid an unexpected visit. And he told Bruce, I wasn't completely honest the night you stopped by. I was awake. Wide awake. In fact, I was sitting in the darkness of my dining room with a revolver in my hand. And you didn't have to say a word. I don't believe in God. But there must be some power in the universe that brought you at that particular time. And that power seemed to value my life more than I valued it myself. Now my left brain said, oh, come on. Really? And my right brain, that part of me that loves mystery, wonders, is there a love beyond reason, beyond knowledge? Is there a love that we mysteriously are part of, connected to? Is there a love that mysteriously connects us to each other? I wonder what would happen if we learned to trust and pay attention to that love.